I am really excited about the interview today with Ezra and Gioconda Rica. I've known them for a really long time. I've known them, man, I don't even remember. It's been a very long time since we met, many years. And so I'm really blessed to be able to just share with them. They have such a heart for worship, such a heart for prayer, and the things that they have to say are so powerful, and their story is so powerful. And I don't want to talk too much about it because I want to give you the opportunity just to go through it, just listen to the podcast, listen to what they have to say, because I know it's going to impact you. I know that God's going to touch you and speak to you through it. I know I remind you guys all the time, and I hope you're not going to get too sick of it, but if you please just help share this, help get this out, and do the subscribe thing and give a little note on Apple Podcasts, or I don't think you can do that on Spotify. I think Spotify you just download or something like that. But subscribe to this podcast so you keep getting the episodes that come out every Tuesday and Thursday. We're doing a lot. We're getting more and more guests, more just wild stories and testimonies. And all I can say is, for me, this journey that started just a few months ago, and I really just thought I was just going to do a couple little bios, and it has turned into this opportunity to speak to some of the most incredible people I've ever spoken to and hear stories from some of the most incredible people. What an honor. What an honor to be able to do this. And so I'm so thankful that you've joined me on this journey. I'm thankful to those of you who have written in and just told me how God has blessed you through this podcast and how God has touched you and spoken to you. And I just, please keep doing it. Also, the Revival Carriers podcast Facebook page, that is happening. So I know a lot of you listen on the podcast. Maybe you don't go on the Facebook page, but just so you know that the Facebook page is there. If you ever want to go in and write in and connect with other people who listen, the Facebook page it doesn't have a lot of activity right now because I don't think a lot of people have discovered it yet because I don't talk about it enough. But there is a Facebook page, and I do go on there. I just started going on there live, doing some little videos on there, and just trying. I want to engage more with you, those of you who are listening and watching. I want to just have more communication with you and hear your suggestions. If there's someone you'd like to hear a bio on, or maybe someone that you know that you think would be an awesome person to interview, I'm always open to that because I'm doing interviews every single week. And if you listen to the interview with Ray from Kicking Bear, you know that was one of those things that just sort of happened. And so I'm very open to new interviews and speaking to new people and hearing stories, because God is doing great things all over the world, and a lot of it is with people who are unknowns and they're not necessarily famous or have big ministries, but God is really using them. So it's a blessing. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this interview. I know you will. I know it's going to be a blessing, and yeah, many blessings. Here we go. Let's just jump into it. Let's just do it. No more talking. We're going. Hey, man.
Hey, Alan. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good.
I was watching that. I watched that worship video that you guys were doing. You did about a week ago, and I saw it and I was like, man, you guys look exactly the same. You like never age. It's amazing.
Well, you can tell it's not the same. But
it's that Costa Rica water here, you know.
Yeah. The weather and the water and the.
Oh man.
Man,
Yeah.
yeah. I saw pictures of Joshua. Your kids are getting so big.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, the kids are growing, definitely. We may not look like it, but they do.
Oh man. Yeah, Elias is 13 now.
Wow, teenager.
Yeah. And he's actually tonight at youth group, he's preaching for the first time. He's doing like a little 20-minute sermon tonight, right after we do this.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really proud of him. I'm really excited to see what God's going to do with him.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
really good. Now, where are you guys at right now?
So right now we're in Pennsylvania, and we were in Texas for a while, and then we came up here. There's a church that we partnered with here that we went up for a conference a couple of years ago, and then after the conference we really had a connection with the church here, and so then they wanted to do sort of like a DTS mission school here, and so we came up and we led that with them here, and then just fell in love with the place and we had been staying at my parents' house in Texas when we were here in the States, but then they sold their house. So we don't really have anywhere else to go to go here in the States. So yeah, it's pretty much, yeah. But it's pretty cool. God's been moving here. So we've got a couple staff now here in Pennsylvania, and God's been just opening up doors, and
good.
Yeah, it's been really awesome. So how have you guys been doing? It seems like every time I look at Facebook, because I don't look at it super often, but it seems like every time I look, you guys seem to be in a different place. You were in Kona, you're in Costa Rica, you're like but you're in San Jose right now, right?
Yeah. We've been here in Costa Rica we're going to be going on 4 years
Wow.
in January next year. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we've just been here and working with the YWAM base with San Jose.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what we usually do on this podcast is, because I've had a bunch of people on, and what the whole point of it is really just, we like to hear people's testimonies and kind of how, because I just did an interview not long ago with another person, and what we were talking about is how there's kind of a disconnect between the local church and ministry, because a lot of people, they feel like they're unable to do ministry because all they see are like the mega famous people, the preachers, the people who have all the bookshelves of their books and teachings and all that. And I kind of, the Lord sort of spoke to me one day whenever I was out on an outreach. I was in Nepal, and I was out in these mountains with all these pastors, and they were people who nobody's ever heard of before. Nobody knows who they are, but they're reaching tens of thousands of people in Nepal. And so I kind of had this moment where God started speaking to me about how there are so many countless amounts of people out there who aren't famous. They're not doing all these books and selling all these products and all these things, but they're doing incredible things for the Lord. And so I started interviewing people just to sort of hear their story, people that they're doing something for the Lord and with God and all these awesome things. And so I've done interviews the last interview I did was with a woman named Lacey Hoover, and she is part of an adoption agency in South Carolina, but she has a ministry where she makes care packages for children in foster care. And she's sending them out to all these kids who, especially now that they've all been quarantined and locked in because of COVID. So she sends them snacks and toys and books and things like that. And then I did another interview a few days ago with a man named Ray, who has a ministry called Kicking Bear, where he got saved. He was a foster kid, and he got saved because he had been in jail, and the probation officer introduced him to hunting. And the Lord, he had this crazy encounter with the Lord through one of his hunting experiences. And he actually got so good with the bow and arrow, he was doing trick shots for corporations. And he was shooting, he did a ribbon cutting ceremony for this one corporation, and he shot 5 1-inch ribbons from 100 yards away, which is a football field. And he hit every single one of them with one arrow, which he said was humanly impossible. I'm no archer or hunter, but he said it's humanly impossible to do that with five in a row. And he said he was a non-believer, and he went up and he was looking at all the arrows in a row, how they'd cut all the ribbons. And he said this thought popped into his mind that said, God had to have guided these arrows, because there's no way I could have done this. And then right there, he got on his knees and accepted the Lord in front of all these corporate people. And now he has,
wonderful.
Yeah. Now he has this ministry where he does camps for troubled kids and kids in single mother homes and things like that. And he's reaching thousands. The average camp has like 500 to 600 kids in it. Wow. And they have all these people come out, teach him to hunt and and so he's just, I'm getting to meet all these people who are really just doing awesome things for the Lord. And so it's been awesome. It's been a blast. And so all of that to say, what I always do is I just start out and just ask if you guys could just tell me your stories. How did you come to the Lord? How did you grow up? What is your journey, and how did you end up in YWAM Costa Rica?
Yeah. Cool. You want to go first?
Awesome. I mean, he's just gonna ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Or am I just gonna say something like
Well,
how is it? How is it? Like, you just tell us, like, we just go and talk about who we are?
You just ask the questions and share your story.
Okay.
So yeah, you just share your story, and then if there are any questions, I might cut you off and ask you a question about it as you're going. It's pretty
Okay.
pretty
I just
late.
didn't know how it was, if it was an interview that you asked us a question and we just go ahead and answer, or I don't know.
Yeah, there'll be questions, but if you could just start with just sharing your story.
All right.
Yeah.
You want me to go first?
All right, Ken. Maybe I'll go first so I'll get warmed up.
Sure.
So, well, I grew up in Oregon, and grew up in a Christian family. Just one sister and my parents, and so I grew up always knowing the Lord. Just, went to church my whole life, and really, like, had a concept of God, from a very young age. I even asked Jesus to be my savior, I think when I was like 5 years old, on my mom's lap,
Wow.
And so it's a super blessing to be able to grow up like that, and just to have a good loving family, and just to be, in that environment. And so, but yeah, I grew up as a normal kid, nothing like too crazy or too different, but I always had, a heart for the Lord. I always had a heart to do good, to be a good kid. I didn't really have any rebel streaks or anything like that. I always wanted to please my parents, and I was the second child, and so I kind of learned from my older sister of what not to do. And so, yeah, and then I just see God's hand on my life as I got older, and just the different things that He led me into. One of the biggest things in my life was just to get involved in worship and in music, and that's always been a big part of my life. When I was actually about 13, when I was a teenager, I got the opportunity to start playing drums for my church worship team. We just had a really small church, and so they're like, we need anybody, and so I had taken some drum lessons before, and so I got the job, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew how to keep a beat, but I didn't know much about worship or anything like that. But I did that, throughout high school, 4 years, and just, Sunday after Sunday, year after year, it just started giving me more and more of a heart of worship, and then I continued that into college, and began leading worship, learning how to play the guitar and things like that. And so that's always been a real big part of my life, that God has always used and still uses today. I think when I was in college, I went to a Christian college, and so during that time, I, again, just started developing more of a heart for ministry. And yeah, I always had a sense of just wanting to really live for the Lord, and just kind of like thinking outside the box. I didn't really want to just live a normal life. I didn't want just the normal 9 to 6 job or whatever they call it. But I always just kept, wanting to look outside, and just, I loved any ministry opportunities that we had. Like in college, I would always go on the spring break serve trips. We would go down to Mexico. That was my first time out of the country, which I also loved. I just had an adventurous kind of spirit as well. I wanted to see and do things, that I'd never experienced before. And so just to be in a different culture in Mexico was just really fun. And then of course, just all the, working alongside of friends, and then also the people in the community, playing with the kids. All those things were really fun for me. And so those things started really forming in my life, like in my early 20s, in those kind of opportunities that I got in college. And then I came out of college, and, still with those things, and the Lord was doing a lot of just kind of reviving, my own heart, and just really continuing to just put that passion for the Lord in my heart. I was reading books about Jim Elliot, the missionary to Ecuador who gave his life, along with Nate Saint and other friends, and just other books of people like that. A.W. Tozer, that just has this passion for knowing God and just thinking about God. And so just this kind of, revival and growth and things were going on in my heart in the early 20s. And I always had in the back of my mind, just, this idea of missions. But kind of the biggest thing keeping me from it was just the whole, how does it work financially, the financial security of it. And I was just always kind of in my mind and just not sure, how that would work. But then about like 3 years after college of just, trying different jobs, also being involved in different ministries, I was just trying to figure out what to do with my life, but not really having any clear direction. But I still had this thing of like long-term missions. And I thought, well, I should just try it out. I'm at this point, I'm still not married. I'm still single. I'll give it a try. And so I started researching along with one of my pastors at my church. He really helped guide me into that process of looking around and praying about the decision of where I should go or what I should do. And that's how I was looking at different options, but one of them was YWAM, Youth with a Mission. And so, the Lord basically led me to go to Panama. I actually, at that time, and I still do, I've always had a heart for Latin America. And I don't know, maybe it started just with those trips to Mexico or something like that. But I always had this desire to just kind of know more of this culture and just know how the people here related to God, compared to how we in the States do. And so I was looking into places in Latin America, and the place that opened up was to go to Panama.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that, because whenever I went to Panama, I didn't even know Panama existed. I only knew about Mexico. That was it. I never knew it. It was actually because of a friend, a girl who was on staff there in Panama. She was a friend of a friend. And I was talking to somebody, and I couldn't get through to anyone in Mexico. I was trying to apply for the bases there, and nobody responded to the emails or anything. And so I ended up, I was with a friend, and I just said, name a country in Central America. That's where I'm going to go. And she said, Panama. And I had no idea where it was. I looked up YWAM Panama, and I applied. And then Debbie Tracy, she called me that same day. And like a week later, I was there.
Wow.
Did you always know? Did you know Panama or anything? You'd just been to Mexico, right?
Yeah. I mean, that was really similar to what happened with me too. I was like looking more into South America, just kind of, Google searches and things like that. But again, I was sending emails, but not really getting anywhere. And then somehow I saw the website for Panama, and I was like, okay, I think that's in Latin America, kind of thing. And so, same thing. I sent emails there, and they responded right away. And so everything just worked together, like the timing for the DTS and all that seemed to fit, And so, it's funny how that works.
How God can guide you. It's so funny. It doesn't matter what, if he wants you to go somewhere, he can show you how to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God's hand is on it, especially when you look back and you see all those details and things.
Yeah.
So, so I came to Panama for the DTS, and just, I loved everything about the experience. I just loved, again, being in this different culture, so different than what I knew. And just to, after reading like books about Jim Elliot and people like that, I always wanted to be in a tropical kind of environment where I can go through the jungle with my machete, be like Tarzan or whatever. And so just that adventurous kind of thing about it was definitely there in Panama. And so I just loved all those things, about the DTS of just, first of all, I didn't think I needed a DTS. I was just ready to get into missions, but with the DTS, you have to do these classes first for 12 weeks. I mean, I went to a Christian school. I knew everything there was about God, right?
Oh yeah.
College. But surprisingly to me, I ended up really enjoying that time of classes and studying, and just going deeper into God, and, you know, just thinking about questions I didn't think I had, but just being able to really, you know, mull over different things about my faith and things like that. And so that was a great thing, a great experience that I came to enjoy, that I still do. It started, you know, that even more of a journey just to get to know God, to pursue knowing God even more and more, which will continue, I know, until we get to heaven. And so, yeah, that part of it was awesome, as well as going on the outreach and just being able to get out there and to love people and just to, you know, witness.
Where did you go on outreach?
It was in Panama. We did part of the time up into Costa Rica, but it was mostly all in Panama. But we, you know, as you know, like the YWAM ministry there does a lot of focus on the indigenous people. So we would go up into the villages, get on the canoes, and go up into the rivers, and you know, hike through the jungle. And I mean, I just love that, and sleeping out in the huts and things like that with the people in the villages, swimming in the rivers, bathing in the rivers, you know. And so, but it was also just an incredible experience to be able to just share the faith. And, you know, that always builds you up when you're doing things like that. So, yeah, that was kind of the beginning of how I got into YWAM way back. That was actually 2002 when I did my DTS.
Wow. Yeah, I did mine in 2001.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. We're in the oldie goldie club almost.
I know. Yeah, I was trying to remember when I met you. I met you, both of you. It had to have been 2006, like early 2006, because that's about whenever I went to Panama. Maybe late 2005.
Yeah.
And so, when did you two get married?
Married.
Yeah, we got married right at the beginning of 2006.
Yeah, it was 2005 then.
Yeah. Wow. So Gioconda, what's your story?
Well, I'm from Costa Rica, and I actually grew up in a Christian family too. And I have to say, I wasn't the white sheep in my home. I have a brother, and he actually started in missions before I did. And he kind of came and talked to us about this group that he found, YWAM. And in that time, I did my DTS in 97. So at that time, for Costa Ricans, that was really weird. Like, we were in our 20s, we were in getting into college, university, and kind of to come to the house and say, I found a new thing that I wanted to do instead of continue university. It was kind of random.
Wow, yeah.
But he went on to do DTS, and after that, I came to visit him often, and because it's very rare for people in our culture to leave their home, but in YWAM you go and live at the YWAM base, and so I went to visit him often, and people will ask me, so are you gonna do DTS? I said, no, that's not for me. That's good for you guys. That wasn't in my radar at that time. I kind of like fashion and design and just different things, and I didn't think missions was that, nice. I always had the picture of, the old missionaries coming to our churches, ladies with the big, dresses and long hair. And I was like, that definitely no for me. And I remember one time my parents asked me to go to a crusade with Alberto Motesi, and he was just doing his evangelistic crusade. And suddenly he started talking about a picture of, this chicken coop. And there was this one chicken that didn't feel like a chicken because it wasn't a chicken. It was actually a geese that was stuck in the same place. And this geese was always looking to the sky thinking, I would love to fly like those other ones that are going there. But he never knew that he was a different thing than a chicken. So until one day he could go out and he figured out he could fly. And Alberto Motesi was talking about how many people in the crowd in this um, stadium, he was saying, you know, like sometimes maybe you feel in the wrong place, and maybe this is your time to fly, to you know, follow whatever God meant you to be. And at that time, it was just kind of clicked with me. I was like, I was serving in a church. I was a youth leader, and I actually had a lot of difficulties because the church pastors, like, they would come to me and said, oh, like, you can't do this. If you're gonna be a youth leader, you can't just do this fashion designing thing and modeling. That's just no godly, you know. And I usually did just like hand modeling, you know, like nails and Sally Hansen and stuff like that, because my parents were Christians and they will also think that was bad to do. So I was like, well, but I had opportunity to reach out to people that the church would never be able to reach out because they wouldn't be friends with those people. So I saw a lot of people. I saw young people, like young girls, you know. I will ask them, do you think, you know, what you do, exposing yourself, or is that worth it to you? Like, you know, like people, I saw people, like some girl, she actually committed suicide because nobody cared about her. They cared about how she looked, but nobody cared about how she was feeling or what she was dealing with. And for me, it was really strong that I could just be friends with these people and speak truth and life and challenge them in their walk and what they were doing. Why do you do what you do? Like, do you think this is worth it? And so I really felt like, well, I don't think I just need to stay, you know, in the local church setting. I just feel like I need to go further, you know. And so I kind of took the challenge. I said, okay, I'm going to do DTS, you know, I'm going to see what God wants for me. And since that moment, I really felt God has calling me to the nations. And that was like something that he put in my heart. And then it was a whole journey. Like, I actually, before I did DTS, I served with Mercy Ships. I went to do like agricultural training in Texas, and I translated for a few times for trips for like medical teams and stuff like that in Nicaragua. And then after DTS, I took my community development school, and that kind of set the way for me to be involved in community development, to have a passion to see people moving towards God's intentions and communities and empowering people. And so I did that school, and I did both DTS and that in Heredia at the base in Heredia in Costa Rica. And then after that, I actually have a really amazing outreach through Central America all the way to Mexico with a car that was really, really challenging, but we totally believe God, and it's a whole story by itself.
Wow. Yeah. It always amazes me how I think every outreach has its own unique sort of craziness that happens in it. Yeah. The memories, even just that you saying that just reminds me of my outreach. It was in the States, but we drove all across the East Coast, and yeah, just the incredible stories that come out of that.
Yeah. It's like each outreach, each thing I embarked on, it was really a thing of faith, you know, like we didn't really have our money to go. Like, there were a couple students who had their finances, and with that, we just prayed, and we bought a car with that money, and we trusted the Lord to provide for our food. And that's how we went. Sometimes we will have like a little cup of cereal, and that was our food. Sometimes we would stop in churches and do ministry, and they will invite us for dinner. And sometimes we even had to sleep in the car. Sometimes just like sitting up, you know. Sometimes we slept in the floor of the church. And it was just amazing what God was doing in the communities, but in our hearts too, you know, like just the revelation of his love and the challenges that we had to depend on him totally. And it was just a beautiful thing to see how he did things through our lives and in us. And it was just amazing to see his provision all the time. Like, we stopped in one church, and then suddenly we had the springs coming out of the car. Like, it was this beat up car. So a guy said, oh, I can fix that. That's my job. So he fixed it. And we were like, wow, this is amazing. You know, like we were getting into Mexico, into Chiapas. And then suddenly, oh, we can actually travel in this car because now it's soft, you know. And it was like that the whole time. Like, I mean, by the time the last place where we ministered was in Mexico City. And it was actually these people from the Volkswagen agency. They invited us to come to do a presentation, you know, in their place of work. And we went, and the lady said, you know, like, I talked to the people in the agency and we wanted to check your car for you guys. And we were like, okay. I mean, we spent the whole outreach just pushing the car because the clutch didn't like work. So we will have to push it and run after the car to jump in, you know, like, because it, like if you want to change the gears, then the car will stop and it will not go back. So we were like just having so much, it was challenging, but it was amazing just to see, like, we knew God called us for that season and we were in the right place. So we will do anything that God needed to do, like wanted us to do. And at the end, like, they even changed the motor. They did a lot of things.
Wow.
And we couldn't even believe it. Like, we were like, wow, like, we didn't even know what to say because we didn't have money. We said, no, we don't have money. They were like, no, we want to bless you with this. And we were like, wow. So it was from the beginning of my time in missions, it was just like a miracle, you know?
Wow.
And it's been an amazing journey. In reality, I don't imagine to be doing anything else than, you know, being missions. And after that time in DTS, I went to work in South Africa with the community school, and that was also amazing. Like 3 years of traveling different nations in Africa, running training, visiting communities, living in the bush. I mean, bringing the gospel in the midst of like Muslims, and just to see the simplicity of life. Like, they didn't have nothing, and these people were content. They will just sing around the fire and talk and go to bed, and they were happy. They didn't have food, but it was okay. Like, I was just so shocked to see and think, oh, you know, back at home, everybody wants to have more and more, but these people don't know what is that. Like, they don't know what is to have more. But it's like, I just love, like, the people in Africa. They're just so simple. They love, they have a passion, and they have a passion for the Lord. When they come to know Jesus, they are sold out, you know. We did had a lot of challenges with witchcraft and people that were like weird, but they go all in, you know, like, and that was something that I really enjoy, serving them and just working with the communities and just trying to encourage them, you know, what are God's intentions for you guys and how you can move towards that, and how the church can see transformation and empower even their communities, you know, to walk in the truth and to see change physically and in their culture and spiritually in many areas. So it's just being an amazing journey, like stories and stories.
Yeah. So how did you end up going to Panama and meeting Ezra?
Well, that was a different, like, I was in South Africa for 3 years. And then after that, I actually left in September 11. I was at the airport at that time. And,
oh, wow.
And people were like, so why don't you stay? Because a year and a half before I was there, and God had called me to stay and prepare an outreach thing. But I didn't have the finances to do that. So I was told, no, you have to pack up and go. And I was trying to talk to my parents, you know, like I said, you know, I just need your blessing. Like, they were like, we don't have money for you to stay and get a new ticket. And I said, I just need your blessing. If you can give me your blessing, then I know God, it will provide. So it was a big training school. And on the way to the airport, like, people were praying for me. I already had prepared a team, and everybody in my team had raised the finances, and I still didn't have my finances. So I was like, Lord, this is crazy. So I was in the bus with like another 50 people, and people will come with scriptures and $20 or $5. Or by the time I got to the airport in Cape Town, I had $500.
Wow.
So I remember getting to the public fund and talking to my dad. I said, Dad, can I stay here? I have $500. And he's like, well, you need $500 more. And I said, well, yeah, but if God provide this, he will provide the rest. Like I can just walk with this. I just need your blessing. I just need you to say, yes, you can stay. And that's what they did. And I stayed. So when I went to back to the base, my brother was actually waiting for me, and he's like, oh, you're killing me. I've been in the bathroom all day long. My stomach hurt. It's so much the stress and everything. And he's like, you're not gonna believe it. Somebody came and gave the other $500. I said, what?
Wow.
Wow. So then 2 days later, I go and buy a ticket, and the lady said, you're not gonna believe it. The price dropped. So now it's like $200 cheaper. I'm like, okay. So I actually had money to go on outreach. So like my time in Africa was amazing. But when I went to the airport to get on my plane to leave South Africa after 3 years, the whole thing with the Twin Towers happened. And we were just watching it in the screen at the airport. And I was actually flying through Turkey to get to England. And then I had a 3 days left layover, and then I was flying to the US. So I prayed, and everybody said, no, just stay here. This is too dangerous to fly. We don't know what's happening. You're going to, Turkey is not safe and all this. I said, well, I'm going to pray. And if God said go, I'm going to go. And that's what I did. I prayed and God said go. So I got in the plane, went all fine. I got to London, and I stayed with my friend 3 days. And that was chaotic. Like the airport was with thousands of suitcases, people that was left for 3 days at the airport waiting for their flights. And I remember just to get to the airport with my staff, I got in my plane and left. I was like, this is just unbelievable.
Wow.
I didn't have any problems. I was like, just doing the same thing you do at the airport. You check in and just get in the plane and left. And all these people, it was so much chaos. Such a terrible situation, and I could just see God's hand, like I was like, thank you, Lord. It worked out well. It could have been really messy. I could have got stuck, in the US, or they couldn't, all these different situations. And so I came to Costa Rica, and then our next school, we run 2 international schools in Africa, and then our following school, like I went to Barbados to do a leadership training school. And then we plan to do a community development school in Jamaica. So I was for 2 years in Jamaica preparing for this school. And then after the school, I came back to Costa Rica, and that's kind of when my brother was pioneering a base here in Costa Rica. And I helped him to run the first community development school here. And he said, hey, how about if you go with me to Talamanca, which is the indigenous, mountains between Panama and Costa Rica. And I said, well, I don't know. I don't think Nico is my big thing. Is this survival camp in the mountains, Did you do, Nico? You probably did.
I actually didn't. They wouldn't let us do it because of our kids.
So anyway, I went there and I said, okay, I'm going to go. God said go. I go there. So I went, and actually it was funny. That's where Ezra was. He brought a team from the Panama base, Panama City. And that's actually where we met. Wow. We ended up being in the same team. And we just we're always talking. But yeah, it was kind of interesting because I from the beginning just thought, like he's in Panama, he's going to be in Panama. So I knew like the nations is this thing that God spoke to me. And that was something really clear, like even in the time in Africa when God asked me to stay, in that one time that I lost my flight, God just showed me like, oh, your call is to the nations, because I actually was going to come and help my brother pioneer his base here since like 99. Wow. So since then, the Lord just detoured and said, no, like, your call is to the nation. So I stayed in Africa and I went to Jamaica and did all this. And here I was again in 2005, back in here to help my brother to pioneer this base. And and then I met Ezra, and we were doing the Nico together, and we were always singing together at the back, like worship. And I kind of figured out, oh, we both like worship, you know, like we enjoy doing this. And we were in the middle of the mountain. It was kind of like survival, you know. And I remember, like, I didn't really think much of it because I was just there for like the 4 days and I'm going to be done with this Nico.
Yeah.
But after that, we went to a conference in El Salvador, which it was a Y1 conference for the region. And that's where we met up again. And I was always talking to the people in his team. He was leading the DTS. And this lady, there were 2 couples in the DTS. And I remember one of the ladies was always like trying to have this conversation with me. She's like, so what do you think of the guys in our team? And she went through all the guys that were in that DTS, and I, no, whatever. So she got to Ezra, and I said, well, he's pretty nice guy, and we talk a lot and everything, but I said, he's in Panama. And then she's like, well, I think he really feels his time in Panama is over. And I was like, okay. So then I finished that conversation and I went back to my room. We were staying in a hotel, and then I just kind of asked the Lord. I said, so was this a GAT conversation, or was it just a simple conversation? So when I was asking the Lord, he gave me the scripture in Ezekiel 37, which the first part is the dry bones, but the second part is about 2 sticks becoming one in God's hand. And that was the scripture that it was 2 kingdoms becoming one and being mighty in God's hand. And I was like, okay. So then after that, I was like, oh, thank you, Lord. I have my word. This is good. You know, this is good for me. So I was ready. I was like, I'm signing, I'm ready. And then I was waiting for him to say something, you know. So in the conference, like we talked and like we exchanged emails and stuff. And then we were emailing each other, and we kind of knew that we were interested in marriage. Like from the beginning, in any, like after being so many years in YWAM single, it's like, hi, what's your name? What's your vision?
Yes, I understand
like,
that.
Hi, bye, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, I was just ready. I was like, I had my word. The Lord said, this is good. 2 sticks in his hand, becoming one. So then I was waiting. I was waiting for him. He was asking how we met.
So you heard Gioconda's side of the
Yeah,
story?
you can hear his side.
Yeah.
It
What took you so long, Ezra? What?
Yeah, really? So, yeah, I don't know what you shared, but you probably shared how we met in the Nico, right?
Yes.
And well, the funny thing was too, at that time I was leading a DTS, you know, from Panama, which we came up to do the Nico at that time. But there was like, it was a great group of students. We actually had 2 families. And so there, you know, two couples that had kids were doing the DTS. And then there is, a few singles, but they're really a fun group. And it was kind of like half joking, half prophetic, but they kept saying, Ezra, you're going to meet your wife in this conference in El Salvador. And all throughout the lecture phase, you know, they kept like joking around about that. They kept saying, sorry, there's just some car.
I heard that. I thought an accident was going to happen.
Yeah. But they kept joking with me and saying, you know,
well, they were thinking in that DTS, because even where you stop, you know, in the highway in Panama, they will always be thinking, oh, Ezra's going to meet somebody like the wife somewhere.
Well, yeah. There's this one time where I was driving them all in a van, and I had to stop at a toll booth, and I was giving the money, to the lady there, and then I took off. And they're like, Ezra, did you see how she was looking at you? And
They were really funny.
Yeah, it was really funny. So anyway, that's kind of how it turned out, though. I met Gioconda, and then we ended up going to that conference, and it was in that conference when like the Lord was, well, I don't know what was going on, but like inside my heart, I was thinking, is she the one? What's going on here? And my thoughts were getting all just crazy and not sure what was happening, but yeah, that's how it all started.
Wow. Okay. And you've been married for how long now?
It's going to be 15 years in January.
15. Wow. Yeah. Carmi and I, we're going to be married. I can't remember how many. I think it's maybe 14, 14 years in March. So yeah,
okay.
We're not that far. That's awesome. And so now, okay, so you've gone through this whole journey. You met, you got married, and Ezra, you ended up going to San Jose to be part of the base there. And so what is it? What is your role? Because I know you've been there for 4 years. I imagine just because of YWAM, because I was in YWAM for so long as well, you kind of bounced around a little bit. But what has been your focus, your goal there on the base all this time?
Yeah. Well, a couple different things. I mean, yeah, the main thing still is with worship, just leading the area of worship here. And then another thing is that we also lead the ministry of Bible distribution. And so that's, that's just something that is a goal for YWAM globally, to put a Bible in every home. And so we're doing that here in Costa Rica. We do that with teams that come. We do that with our DTSs.
How many Bibles have you given out?
Well, since I've been a part of it, it's been probably close to around 2,000,
Wow.
Maybe 2,500. But YWAM San Jose, since we started, I think about 8 years ago, it's been over 10,000 Bibles, something like that. So.
And that you go house to house to do that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you have, because when we were in Panama, we had maps of everything where we got from the city, and we'd mark off the roads. Do you guys do that as well?
Yeah, we also do that. Yeah, we try to, we're trying to get organized with it and strategic, but that's the idea, is to kind of take, little sections at a time and mark it off. There's actually some guy, I think he was out of Kona, Hawaii. He actually made an app for people that are doing Bible distribution. And it's a really cool thing. You can actually, as you're going door to door, you can just touch on the map on the app of where you've gone. And you can either select whether they've received a Bible, or they already had a Bible, or they weren't home, things like that. And so that keeps track of everything too. So we've tried using that app as well.
Can anybody use that, or is it just for YWAMers, or?
Yeah, anybody can use it. I think you have to find the app, through people that are using it already.
Okay, so it isn't just openly available on the Apple Store or something like that.
It might be, if you look for it. Yeah, I could tell you the name. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd love to have the name, just to write it, because I always have just different notes that people can read whenever they finish the interview, and so sometimes I like to put little things like that in there. So if the app is out there, it'd be cool. People might want to download it and check it out. Yeah,
I can find out. I can look it up.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So man, 10,000 Bibles. I heard that in Kona, was it Kona, or is it another one of the islands there in Hawaii, where they have covered the entire island now? They've given Bibles in every single home on the island, the YWAM base there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they have. I mean, I know they did that quite a while ago, back, I think in the 80s was the first time that the Lord really started moving them towards that. And then I'm sure they've done that recently again. And also out of Kona, they're doing lots of just initiatives of Bible distribution, where they do that in Nepal and many other countries. And so, yeah, it's neat to see that, that all around all around the globe, YWAM is really pushing towards that. And really it's coming from Lauren Cunningham. That's just one of his main things
Passions.
his passions that he's just talking about whenever he gets the chance is to get a Bible in every home, as well as finish translating the Bible into all the languages that are still yet to be translated, so that every person can have the Bible in their mother tongue. And so, yeah, just the importance of the Word of God. You know, you've probably seen the book that he wrote about the book that transforms the nations.
Oh yeah.
And it really is amazing, just the gift and the power, you know, of the Word of God, and how that, and that's really what we're trying to do through Bible distribution, is just to lay that foundation of the Word of God in nations, so that because that needs to be a part of the revival and the reformation that God wants to do. It's always based upon, you know, God's Word, and that's what really brings the long-term transformation and you know, sustained changes in nations and people's lives. So,
do you find whenever you go out and you do Bible distribution, do you have a lot of resistance? Because I know here we did some Bible distribution, not very often, but we have done Bible distribution going door to door. And every time you have people who come out and they're screaming at you and cursing at you. And do you have that issue there in Costa Rica? Or are people a little bit more open to it?
Yeah, I would say people are more open here. Just, you know, I think this culture is a little bit more warm, you know, the warm culture climate. And so people are pretty friendly, pretty open. I think the main thing that we find as far as resistance is that, you know, also as a culture, it's very Catholic. And so, you know, many times the response is just, I'm Catholic, which, you know, for us, it's kind of like, okay, so what does that mean? But it kind of means that, that it is kind of, it's a different, you know, than the evangelistic, you know, kind of Christian.
But I think one of the things is that, like, we try to stay with the middle ground, you know, like if they say they're Catholic, we just ask, can we pray for you? Is there anything that we can do? If you already have a Bible, that's great. I mean, it's just a way to say, you know, our goal is to put a Bible in every home. So you have one, that's awesome. Like if you don't, we can give to you for free, and just have the opportunity how we can pray for you. And it's just amazing to see what God does. Many times it's...
Yeah, we still get like lots of just openness, even from Catholics that, you know, that they may not really agree or understand why we're giving out Bibles, but they're still very open most of the time for us to pray for them. And that's something we always, you know, try to ask, is if we could pray for people, because it's not only giving a Bible, but it's just that personal ministry, you know, to people that is so powerful and so impacting. And so every chance that we get, we just try to share about the Lord. We just try to ask if we can pray for them. And it's just amazing how we've seen God just, you know, meet those people, meet us in those moments like that. You know, just as we take that small step of obedience and just kind of willingness just to, you know, talk to people about the Lord, he shows up, and we always see it whenever we go and do, you know, those outreaches.
Yeah. You guys, you've been in ministry for so long. For you, what have been some of the hard parts of ministry? What, being in as missionaries for so long, what have been some of the struggles for you? And I ask that just because I know you probably do as well. I know for myself, especially here in the States, I often meet people who they say that they want to be missionaries. They want to go on the mission field. And a lot of times they'll go and they'll quit, because oftentimes when you read missionary books or you read biographies or whatever, it tends to be mostly just highlights, and they don't really talk so much about what is the hard part about missions. And so people don't really have any expectation of that. They don't realize, oh, this could be difficult. So for you, what have been the challenges of being on the mission field for so long?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's a real thing, because I mean, first of all, because the enemy doesn't want anybody being a missionary, right?
That's right.
And so he'll just bring up anything in your life that maybe you struggle with, and try to make that an issue. And so, you know, like me personally, or us, we'll see just a wide variety of different things that can just try to bring discouragement or try to make you want to quit, you know. And that's one of the big things, is just, you know, there's yeah, the enemy just wants to get you to quit. And like Lauren Cunningham and other leaders in YWAM always say, the most important thing is just never give up, and that is such an important part of anything in life, that you want to go towards. If you just don't give up, then you'll eventually get there and you'll see some good things happen. And so, I mean, I think for me, there's lots of things that come to mind. Again, it's always a walk of faith and trusting in God, especially when like finances get tight, when you start thinking about the future. You're thinking about like when kids are going to go to college and things like that. And so those questions come in mind of just the what if, or how is it going to work in the future, and that's all kind of based in fear. When you start going that way, instead of based in faith, which is what God calls us to. And so it's a challenge, to live by faith, to walk by faith. But again, it's just a not give up kind of thing, and like always go back to just who God is. And I mean, that happens often for me, that I have to face some of those difficult thoughts and things that try to throw me off. And I just have to get back to God and like really get myself focused and get to that place where I know who God is, and I'm going to believe that in my heart. So that, that's a big one. I think too, a huge one is just, is with relationships, with people. And that's something that, we teach about in our DTSs, is about relationships and how the enemy uses that to get people out of missions, just because of conflicts in relationships, and just, people have different ways of doing things, different ways of thinking about things. And that's different than mine. And so there's just always, different personalities. So there's always a walk, like there's always a challenge to walk in humility, to walk in like, surrendering, submitting yourself to other people, like we do that, mutually. And so just working as a team, working in relationship, it's a challenge, but it's a beautiful thing, when we do it with the Lord, but it's a challenge as well. Those are a couple things that come to my mind. I don't know if you want to add.
Well, I think when you read a book, it's kind of, fun, but when you are in the real deal, like when you're doing it, it's like, well, not that fun, like you're trusting the Lord for a miracle, but it is faith, like it's that exercise of faith, to believe what he said he's going to do, to know that his word is a promise, to really make your walk of faith, and it's like Paul, he's running the race with his eyes on Jesus, letting go of everything, the entangles, there is a hindrance, that it is like that. It is just a walk, because it is true. Like sometimes you will get to a place and, oh, we're going to travel. 6 tickets. That's a lot of money. Or we're going to do whatever. It's just like, oh, how do we do this? But because I seen God like giving approbation for so many things. It's like, okay, he can do it again, and sometimes it's a challenge because maybe we don't see it in the moment and we have to step out, but it's just a walk, and I think people might not really think, well, it didn't work for me this time, maybe this is not my thing, but it's not that simple, like we don't make a contract with God, like I'm gonna serve you and you're gonna do everything that I need. It's more like we say, we lay down our life and we're going to trust you that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. It's more like a trust thing.
That's awesome. So what do you say to somebody? Let's say we have somebody who listens to this or watches this, and you have a young person who they want to be a missionary. And let's say they want to go to Costa Rica. They want to train with you guys there in San Jose at the YWAM base. What advice do you give to somebody who comes to you with that passion? What are the first steps that someone would take in order to just even go in that direction?
Well, the first thing I would say, get a word of the Lord. Know you're going to the right place. Because for me, that's just the way I have functioned always. Like I need to have something I hold on to, and then I don't care about
So
wind and storm.
so
Like,
what does that look like? What does that look like for somebody? Because some people, a lot of people, they hear that and they think, I don't even know what the word of the Lord looks like. What would they look for?
well, for me, I just need to know that God is saying to me, this is what you're going to do. Like, you know, like I shared about getting married. Like I
Yeah.
had the scripture God gave me and I said, okay, I'm set. Like, I don't need anything else. I know this is from the Lord, but I know it's different for everybody. But I think something that is very important is that you feel at peace. Like God will give you a peace that you are in the right place, doing the right thing. Most of the time, if we're not doing the right thing, then it will be, you know, you will think about it twice, you will question it, you will, you know, wonder. But if you have the peace of God and you know this is what God spoke to me, that's good.
Okay. So you believe that having sort of like a confidence that doesn't go away is a confirmation in this.
Well, and you can ask people to pray with you. You can
Yeah.
ask your parents, you can ask your pastor, you can ask different people, you know, can you walk with me on this process? Like, I feel like God is saying this to me. So you don't feel like, you know, is this like, you know, I know God can speak to you, and I certainly know he can speak to everybody, but sometimes it's hard for people to hear his voice. Sometimes it's hard to know, well, I don't know, I never talked to God, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But it's important that, you know, you talk to God, you talk to others, you seek advice. And sometimes it's going to be challenging. Sometimes you're not going to have all the money, you know, to go. Like sometimes people think, oh, I have all the money, I save all the money, so I'm just going to go and do it because I have what it takes. But, you know, God can do that too. Like he can use and encounter you in that place. But I would really recommend that you seek him, that you ask him, you know, like, because when we are going to be missionaries, we are going to be depending on God. We don't depend on the people that give us the money. We don't depend in like self supporting ourselves. We depend in God. Like he spoke to us to do something, so we trust him in that.
Yeah.
So for me, like that's really, really key.
Wow. Yeah, I know that's one of the things a lot of people struggle with is the whole financial side, because I was talking to somebody else in another interview about this, about how I meet so many people that I've known for years that will talk about how, oh, I'm just saving up enough money to go on the mission field, but they end up perpetually saving money and never actually going. And a lot of it is because the way things work in the kingdom are the opposite. You kind of have to go. It's of course different with different people and how God speaks to you, but oftentimes you kind of have to go first, and then God starts to provide as you're there. It's how those steps of faith, you know?
Yes.
So for you, how has it been having a family? I know for me, the biggest struggle with my boys was that for me, I just struggled as a parent with them not having really not having friends. And we homeschooled with all the travel and everything, and just doing that kind of stuff. For you, I actually remember having a conversation with Lauren Cunningham about this, because I was really struggling with just my kids. I felt like life was so unstable, just going on outreaches, because I was whenever I was in YWAM, I was leading a lot of schools and I was leading a lot of short-term teams. And I just felt like my kids had no stability. And I asked him, I said, what advice would you give me? How do I not have my kids grow up and be crazy? Like a lot of missionary kids are, you know, they grow up and they just go off on some other thing. And he told me, he said, the most important thing is to have stability in life, that it can be small things. He said whenever he would travel with his kids, he would always bring the same blankets for his kids, they'd have their own plates and their own cups and their own forks that they traveled everywhere with. And so whenever they were in a hotel or at a church floor or whatever, they could make their little room, the same toys, all that kind of stuff. So for you two, how has it been raising these kids on the mission field? And I know, Gioconda, I know you're from Costa Rica, so you're raising them at home, but in terms of having these kids who are, because like Carmi and I, it's two different cultures, raising children, in this, in a different context than what most people would. How has that been for you?
Well, I think it's interesting because, like you said, you know, like when we start without kids, you know, like we were married and God called us actually to go to Hawaii. And we went when Joshua was 9 months old. And then Abby was born there, and Mariah was born here, but she lived in Hawaii for a year. So we were there for almost 5 years. And that was a really good place for being a family in missions. Like, it was beautiful, like a lot of families. And it shaped our idea of family in missions, of how the kids can be part of what we do. You know, it's not just like my dad or my mom are missionaries, but we are missionaries. We as a family do it together. And it changed our idea of having kids even. Like, I remember when when I was there, I was thinking, I'm just going to have two kids, you know, because my brother and I were two, and Ezra and his sisters two. And I thought two was good. But being there, like, God really, you know, shake that. Like, he was just really challenging me, you know. Like, we had this moms group, and I remember one of the speakers, like, she came and she was asking about how God challenged her to allow him to be God in that part of the relationship. And she was sharing how he was saying, you want me to be God in your finances, but you don't want me to be God in this area of having kids. You said, I want two, and that's it. I don't want any more, or three or four. I think they had three at that time, or four. And they were like, we're done. And God was like, well, and that really challenged me, because like her encounter with God, like she was outside of a Planned Parenthood thing, and she was praying, you know, against abortion. And he was saying, well, you're not really different than them. And she's like, no, I'm pro-life. And he's like, I'm the giver of life. And you said you don't want any more kids. So, I mean, it's like, I'm God. I'm the one who gives life, but you want me to be God in your finances, but not in this part. And so I was so challenged. I was like, God, we can trust you, because the main lie of the culture is like, oh, you're going to have too many kids. And then, yeah, what about 6 tickets? You know, that's the thing. Like, if you put your eyes on that, then you're not going to have those kids, because it's too much money, you know, like, it's just this big lie. And we have to be saying, well, God, we trust you with those, whatever we trust you for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 tickets, we're going to trust you because you're the same God. So that's the challenge for people to overcome that. So when we were there, and then God called us to leave Hawaii and come back to Latin America, and we were in Panama, and then we came to Costa Rica. I think the most important thing for us was, how can we do missions as a family? Like, how can we go? And we also are involved with Homes of Hope, and our kids love to go and build homes with us, and go and give Bibles to people in their homes. And I think part of that moving around and traveling, it's just that we are a family, and we trust God. We listen to the Lord. We pray together. God, can we go here? What do you want us to do? And then they feel like they're part of that. It's not just like we come and announce, we're going to do this, guys, or whatever, but we do it together.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Well,
sorry for the rain.
Oh, it's raining right now.
It's pouring.
Oh, wow. Well, no, that's okay. Yeah. I mean, so I just have one last question, really. Whenever, Ezra, you mentioned that one of the things that you guys focus on there, and the basis on worship, is that leading worship, or do you do worship schools there as well?
Yeah, we have done worship schools in the past. Yeah, that's something we would like to do. We're not running any right now. So yeah, it's leading worship, and really, you know, like for me, early on when we were just recently married and getting into YWAM, you know, that's something that God kind of marked my life in that area of worship, not just to, you know, lead worship or lead music or whatever, but kind of the main thing of just to be with God more than doing for God, and kind of like keeping first things first. You know, the first and greatest commandment is to love God. You know, just love Him with all that we are. And then the second is to love your neighbor, you know, to go out and do the ministry.
Yeah.
And so keeping that priority is so important, you know, and just to prioritize just being with God, just being in His presence, just sitting at His feet, you know, like Mary did. And so, yeah, those things are very important, especially for a missions base, you know, that we're a part of, because we're always doing stuff. You know, we're always geared just to go out and be busy and do things. And so, yeah, kind of, you know, part of this worship ministry is just to keep that priority where we can just keep pursuing God, you know, and in prayer. We have a prayer room that we've, you know, developed on the base here. And just to kind of say, you know, we value this in the midst of our community. We want to make it a value. We want to make it a priority of just looking to God, you know, just gazing upon His face, just being in His presence, because that's where we get filled up so that we can take, you know, Him to the people. And if we're not doing that, then what are we taking? You know, sometimes it's just from our own strength or different things like that. And so we always want to just be going back to that place of seeking the Lord, seeking His presence, and keeping that first love, you know, burning hot for the Lord and not growing cold. And so that's kind of my passion and what I, you know, try to keep in our community in this area of worship and prayer and just pursuing the Lord.
Do you think that passion for worship is something that maybe is lacking a little bit in some of the churches around the world? Not any church in specific, but just in terms, I just think of, especially here in the United States, church attendance has gone down 1% every year for the past 20 years. So it's down 20% in the United States and dropping. And sometimes I feel like a lot of it has to do with the presence of God lacking. Do you feel like maybe a lot of worship is more, you talked about leading music. Do you think a lot of it is more music than worship, maybe more concerty than music or than worship? Or how do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, for my own opinion, I would say definitely yes. I do remember 20 years ago, you know, and those were the days that I was really getting a heart of worship in my own church. And it was such a, you know, I remember there were always just sweet times of really experiencing the presence of God, you know, and feeling the weight of His glory. And I wonder, and you know, it's probably true that is lacking, you know, a bit in many churches because of different reasons. You know, maybe the reasons started out good, that, you know, they wanted to bring more people into the church. And so maybe it became kind of the seeker friendly or whatever that's called. And so instead of just going for it into that, you know, into that place of just the glory of God, maybe it's become a little more superficial, you know, and so they're not allowing people to get there. So I think that, yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of that is being missed.
Yeah. I was talking about that with another guest we had on the podcast as well, just about how, and we were talking about prayer and Bible school, because that's Sunday school, because there are a lot of things whenever I was a teenager, things that were so key to my growing up, just the passion that I have for missions and the Lord and everything. So much of it was going to church on Sunday morning. And I remember the group of teenagers, we were reading the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis at 13 years old. And we were talking about this in Sunday school. And now the vast majority of churches don't even have Sunday school, and people don't pray before service starts. And there's and the worship is, a lot of it is it's more concert than it is really trying to just build that altar to the Lord in worship, and to allow the glory of his presence to really rest on it. And a lot of times it's so rushed because worship it's like everything revolves around the sermon. And so the worship is sort of the precursor to the sermon. It's sort of like warming people up for the sermon, rather than I read this. Oh, who was it? I just did. Oh, whenever I was reading about William Seymour, I did the last, a couple episodes ago, I did a biography on William Seymour and the Azusa Street Revival, and how it was birthed and how it died. And one of the big reasons that it was even birthed in the first place was because they had a huge focus on worship. And when they went into worship, they said that worship was a holy sacrifice to the Lord. And they saw it as one of the most sacred, it just gave me goosebumps just talking about it. But they said it was one of the most sacred moments of the entire revival, was when they would come into worship. And it wasn't just, we're going to sing and then we're going to hear William preach or whoever preach. It was, this is the time. This is when we are giving a sacrifice to the Lord. And it was just so powerful.
I think part of that is that hunger to know God, to hear his voice, to know his presence, to hear his heart, like that intimacy. Like if we do that during the week, if we are pursuing the Lord, then Sunday when we all gather will be a place where we can come and just be in awe of who God is. And, like it's something that we need to cultivate, to pursue, to long for that presence of God. And the thing is that it revolves around God. It's not about the program or how many minutes or how many whatever, but it's about more encountering God, encountering his presence, and be known by him and know him. And I think that's something that God is actually even moving us towards that, because I can think of this whole COVID thing and how interrupted all the normal life. Like everything has been like I know a lot of people have said it's like a reset, like hasn't been anything in history, at least in the last decades, that is being like this for the whole world. But I think God is bringing us to him, like in the midst of all the fear. Like we don't have to be fearful. We don't have to, go in that, but we need to run to him, to hear from him, to feed on him, to pursue him. But I think many times all that noise and all the commotion, it just kind of, instead of us pursuing him, people kind of shut down, it's like, oh, what do we do? Like you can go to church, you can go here, you can go there, but we can always go to God, like that's what he wants us to go to him. And I think it's unprecedented times, and I think God is gonna, make something different out of all this mess. It's something that is not bringing life, is detrimental, is bringing distraction and all these different like death. But if we pursue God, if the church, gets this passion for him, there will be something beautiful coming out of that.
Yeah. Well, Ezra and Gioconda, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your passion for worship. And it's just so powerful. And I know that it's going to be a real blessing for a lot of people. And I just really appreciate your time. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, we appreciate it too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you again soon. Have a great afternoon.
All right.
Bye.
Bless you.
Bye.